Hey guys, when you dedicate your life to helping other people find well-being, the last thing you probably expect to face is your own perplexing health struggles. But that's exactly what happened to my guest who's here with us today. And what both breaks my heart and also humbles me is that my channel was the first place that she found validation on her journey and hope. Hi everyone, I'm Raelan. On this channel, you'll find over 170 inspiring recovery stories from conditions like ME/CFS and long COVID, all contributing to a research study that's exploring recovery themes and looking at how people get better. My guest today is Niki Inglis, a fellow Canadian who splits her time between Vancouver and Costa Rica. Niki's health journey began with a parasite infection complicated by antibiotic damage and then COVID. Spending tons of money on naturopaths and supplements and tests did not help. Something much more simple ended up leading to her recovery. I'm sure you're going to find her story both relatable and also very inspiring, as well as hopefully learn some strategies that you can consider applying for your recovery as well. Niki, amazing to have you here today. Thank you for doing this.
Hi, thank you. I'm so happy to be here after watching so many of your episodes. It's really great.
But before we dive in, I'm excited to tell you about today's sponsor, Southern New Hampshire University. When Niki, my guest in this video, started to get her health back, she went back to school to pursue a psychology degree. A lot of people that I interview on this channel share how the experience of facing chronic illness changed the way they want to live their lives. And as a result of this, many people end up wanting to change their careers. This is a totally common feeling, but a lot of times people don't make the change, and it's because career changes can be intimidating. Oftentimes, we need experience or additional education to make the life changes we really want to make. SNHU's mission is to make this type of transition much easier for people by offering radically low tuition, which are some of the lowest in the country, and also more accessibility with online classes and rolling admissions, so that you can get started much more quickly. SNHU is accredited, it's nonprofit, and they offer over 200 online degree programs, so there's likely one that fits what you're looking for. For example, if you're interested in psychology, in that program, you'll explore the inner workings of the human mind and lay the groundwork for different career paths where it's critical to understand human behavior. If you've been wanting to make a big life change but didn't know where to start, SNHU is the place you start. Go to snhu.edu/RAELAN, also linked in my video description down below. Fill out a quick form with your interests and contact information, and an admissions advisor, an actual real person, will hop on a call with you and discuss what's best for you. You never know, this could be the change you've been looking for. And thanks again to SNHU. You have had quite the journey with this, so I'm really excited to hear all about this because I know you've had a lot of insights along the way. So how did this all start for you?
There's a little bit of a backstory here, which I think takes me a little bit out of the norm in a way, but I also know lots of people have this too. I got a parasite in 2018 in Southeast Asia. And I came home and I entered the medical system, obviously scared, and I ended up taking a lot of antibiotics. So I kind of came into COVID with a pre-existing gut condition, which I think probably predisposed me to not handling COVID all that well. But I got 2 vaccines, like many people, early on. And that worsened my gut symptoms for sure. And then I got COVID, and it was a rough time, but I got through it. And then about a year later, I still had some dysautonomia symptoms, racing heart and difficulty breathing and things like that through the year. But I didn't really. I'm a yoga teacher, so I kind of breathed it away. But then in April of 2022, I guess it was, something happened to me overnight, and I woke up in the morning with feeling very, very bad, just thinking that it was a virus and that it would go away. And I ended up being housebound for a couple of months at that point with sort of COVID-like symptoms, but not cold symptoms, but more headaches, the ever-present gut symptoms that had come back after the vaccines, and some other a sort of host of really bad things. Like I wasn't able to focus and see. I couldn't drive for a while. And I had something that developed with the vaccines actually was what I referred to as fasciculations for a long time, but they're foot twitches. So, and that is actually still with me, one of the prevalent symptoms that I've had for a year and a half now. And I just sort of thought it would go away. It developed into a virus and I got a cough and I was quite sick. Maybe some doctors said it was pneumonia, but then I ended up being housebound for a couple of months at that point and struggling to figure out what it was, of course, starting then.
So what were you thinking in that moment when you suddenly had all of these symptoms and were housebound and doctors weren't giving you much?
I was undoctored at the time. So that's like a lot of people are. I know that that's really a difficult thing in Canada.
What does that mean, doctored?
I shouldn't say doctored. I'm under-doctored. My GP, yeah, my GP was definitely not supportive. My GP that I had been with for years, I went in and described the symptoms to her, and she was unsupportive. I think unsupportive is probably the nicest way to say it. She dismissed my symptoms, and she told at the end of our session, I actually asked her what I should do because these things were quite debilitating. Like I would actually not be able to get out of bed sometimes. And she said I should go to emergency. So I think, and that was just a result of COVID, and it was a result of overwhelm. I don't blame her. I know that the system was overwhelmed, and I know there wasn't a lot of education around it, but I felt undoctored at that point. I have since sort of looked for someone more sympathetic to the whole viral persistence diagnosis, I guess. She did not diagnose me with viral persistence. I eventually did get that diagnosis through TELUS, through an online health appointment.
It's an interesting thing to hear and to talk about because I talk to people all over the world and I always want to hear what is their experience of getting ME, CFS, long COVID in different countries. And in some countries, there's zero awareness of it. And it's not even talked about, which obviously is a problem. But even in countries like Canada, which has one of the better healthcare systems in the world, does not guarantee that you're going to get treatment that you need or going to get even taken seriously. I also initially was sent home and dismissed and told that there was nothing wrong with me. So
yeah. And your story was really one of the very first things that I found that was supportive for me and made me feel like I wasn't crazy. And going through your episodes with different people, as you say, all around the world, was one of the first supportive things that actually happened to me. So thank you for your work.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's my honor to do it. And just speaking to those people that are in some of these countries where there's zero awareness of it at all, I'm very, heartbroken that you're going through this, and just know that it's a common experience, all over the world, unfortunately, even when there is awareness of it. So what did you do from there?
This was somewhere around, April and May. I got it in April, and in April and May, I kind of just survived. So I looked for everything that I could do to get through the night. One of the worst things was insomnia, and it was a racing heart and anxiety in the middle of the night, which I had never had before. I'd always had really good sleep. I wear an aura, and I knew that my sleep was really good. And then all of a sudden it was not happening. I was afraid to go to sleep. So I had this sort of racing heart situation. And the first thing that helped me was actually tapping, EFT tapping. I have a colleague who teaches EFT, and I got online with her. She's in Switzerland, and she talked me through quite a few sessions of EFT, and I was able to practice it before I went to sleep, and that actually got me to a place where I could not fear falling asleep. And I'm sure and lots of the people you interview probably have that same feeling, as when you can get the sleep, at least not scary, that's a huge step forward. So that was sort of the first thing that was helpful to me. And then the next thing I did was spend $20,000 on naturopaths and supplements and things, which I know is also not an uncommon story. But I just started to go to shop for naturopaths who would support me and help me to get well.
Yeah, it's another common thing. that I hear from people about the finances. A lot of us spend a lot of money trying to recover. And there are, of course, many people in the world that don't have money throw at their recovery like this. And of course, financial stress makes everything more challenging. I'm not trying to diminish that. But also just a message to people who are watching that of the many, many people I've interviewed, money for the most part has not been the answer. The treatments that ended up helping in the end were very low cost or no cost at all. So just because you happen to be in a lower income bracket right now, which many people are who are facing these conditions because they can't work.
Exactly.
It does not mean you can't recover.
No.
Yes, some things do cost a bit of money, and I get that's always an equation, but yeah.
The things that I paid money for were, in general, not the things that helped.
Yeah.
I spent a lot of money. I think we all have a supplement graveyard in our kitchen. Yeah, you're looking at yours, aren't you?
Oh my goodness. It's insane. I was spending something like 1,000 Canadian a month on supplements every month. It was absolutely ridiculous.
Yeah. Those were not the things that helped. Although I acknowledge the support of naturopaths along the way. I definitely do acknowledge that. And I acknowledge my gratitude that I could, in fact, have some things, like I could have massage, which was one of the things that really helped. But yeah, the next thing that really helped, actually, I discovered by accident, which was Himalayan salt therapy. I actually ended up going to a Himalayan salt room. I don't know if you've heard of this, but I realized that when I had my low back and my feet on Himalayan rock salt, that these fasciculations or these leg twitches were much less. So that struck me as bananas, but it was repeatable. So I ended up buying a big bag of Himalayan salt and putting it in my apartment and lying on it for some part of every day, especially before bed. And it would really reduce these twitches that I was having in my legs, and it definitely improved my sleep.
So you mentioned a couple things that have improved sleep, and I know sleep is something that so many people struggle with. The other one you mentioned was the tapping, which is something I hear a lot in my interviews, but still something that a lot of people don't have much awareness of. So could you just give a general high level explanation of what the tapping is and how it works?
Sure. Yeah. A lot of people are very resistant to it. It makes you feel funny when you're doing it. It makes you feel like makes a lot of people feel self-conscious. It works, as far as I know, it works on many levels. I mean, there is the affirmation. You do say positive affirmations while you're doing it, which is some of the part that makes people feel uncomfortable. You also tap as you're doing that. So you tap along some meridians, or as we now know, sort of parts of the nervous system or the fascia in our face. And we tap sort of around the vagus nerve. And it's free. There are tons of I just happened to have someone who sort of took me through it at first, but there are tons of free resources. I can let you know probably the most common one, but it's free. And it's one of those things that I encourage people to try it, even though you might feel a little uncomfortable. Just give it a try and see. It only takes a few minutes a day. You tap in a certain pattern. They call it the teddy bear pattern. That's the pattern. And you say things out loud and you sort of work through fears. In my case, it was fear of falling asleep and fear of waking up with a racing heart and anxiety.
Yeah, I even just recently started going to counseling, and my therapist, I was talking about some work stress, and she has me doing this in my sessions, and it's been really dramatically helping me reduce my fear and anxiety and stress around different things at work. So yeah, it's a fascinating thing. It seems applicability to many different things.
I really ask people to suspend their disbelief around that. When I use it with my students, and I use it. I'm a budding therapist, and I use it in therapy as well. And it's hard for people to suspend that feeling, but
it feels silly to me, and it feels like woo. Like I know it's backed by science, which is the reason I embrace it. But I went to June, and I'm like, this is ridiculous. We're trying to deal with something very serious here, and you're having me
tap teddy bear pattern. Yeah, I know.
What is this voodoo?
I know.
Something real. But yeah, so many people are saying it's helpful. So I appreciate you explaining that a bit.
And free.
Yeah.
And free. Thanks to the generosity of people on YouTube.
Yeah. So there were some other things as well that have helped you along the way. So what are a few of those other things?
Yeah, I sort of kept moving at that point once I started noticing that certain things were helping. Electrolytes helped a lot. And I know that that's a common story, and I still take them. So that's one thing. I don't think that's anything new. Another thing that I noticed that helped was neurofeedback. And neurofeedback is expensive. So I sort of tried to figure out what to do about that idea. I didn't have the money at that point to continue with neurofeedback, or it felt like a lot of money. So I actually purchased a heart math device. I don't know if you've heard of heart math. You probably have. No.
I've heard of it, but I don't know what it is.
Okay, I meant to have the device with me, but it's a little device and you clip it onto your clothing and you clip the other thing onto your ear, and it measures your HRV and your heart rate and the space between the heartbeats. So, and your HRV tells us a story about, as you know, about our nervous system state. And we can't heal unless we're in sort of that green zone. And heart math is a way of breathing that puts you into the green zone, or that sort of rest and digest zone. And so it's this kind of little device. It's I think it's $250, which is a lot less than neurofeedback sessions. And so you can do it at home. You do it with an app on your phone, and it goes hand in hand with all the rest of the kind of modalities of calming the nervous system and just allowing for healing, I think.
Okay, that's good to know, because I have the Aura Ring as well, and it tells you your heart rate variability, but I'm never quite sure what to do to improve it or how I'm set. So very interesting. And then you also mentioned the other sessions that you're doing that I also don't know what that involves. So what is that?
Oh, what was that? Do you remember the name?
Your ones. What were you calling them just right now?
Neurofeedback.
Neurofeedback session.
Yeah. Neurofeedback is really interesting. You can do it in different ways. They attach sensors to your head, and then which measures your brain waves, and then you watch some things. I don't really fully understand it either, but what's happening in your head translates to, in this case, it was music and patterns on a TV screen, and you watch them, and that calms your nervous system. So it responds to your brain specifically, and it calms your nervous system. And you can feel it afterwards. It's quite profound for most people, I think. But it is pricey. It's like $90 for an hour, maybe more, maybe over $100. You can rent those machines as well, but that's also expensive.
Okay. Very interesting. All right. Okay. Anything else on your journey that's been helpful for you?
I guess the things that weren't helpful, there's things that weren't helpful, but they had parts that were helpful. So I think dietary changes, I got every test that I could find and afford, and dietary changes didn't really help that much, but hydration helped a lot. So I think really, really hydrating, which didn't come naturally to me, something that I had maybe have neglected for years. That really did help a lot, and that was in combination with the electrolytes, and that really did help me.
I was waiting. You said you had a list. I'm waiting for.
Oh, you want more? Yeah, you want more? Yeah. Okay. Another thing, a product that really helped me was actually something called B minerals. Have you ever heard of those?
I have not.
It's actually fulvic acid. You can either take fulvic acid internally, which kind of helps with electrolytic balance, but you can also spray it on, which is really nice for people that can't take supplements. So that was another thing that really helped. And then another thing that really helped was calming down exercise. So I am a yoga teacher trainer, and my automatic response to getting sick is to do more yoga, specifically myofascial self-release. That's something that I've been doing my whole life, and my whole professional life. And it actually worsens everything. And that was really hard for me to accept, was to really take that back to very gentle movement. And even on the down days, I used the Curable app, and on days when my body and these apps were telling me that it was a day I shouldn't exercise too much, I really took that yoga back to almost nothing or nothing, or even rest or breath work or meditation. So really moving away from the more sort of the deeper stretching and the myofascial self-release with balls and stuff like that. I really had to kind of give that up for a long time.
I imagine that was challenging, to put it mildly, something that had served you so well and been such a
Mm-hmm.
big part of your life, to have to admit that
Mm-hmm.
this actually isn't serving me right now, at least not in the
Yeah.
way that I'm used
Yeah.
to practicing it.
It
Yeah.
was really difficult. And then
And the,
as you like returning to work was also part of that. And so I took some time off work and I took some time off school. And then when I returned to work, that is my work. And my work is actually teaching people to teach yoga. So I was demoing these things, and it still is very clear that when I do that kind of work, it provokes symptoms.
so how did the Curable app help? Because this is also something a lot of
Mhm.
people mentioned. So how is that?
Mhm. It helped me be more honest with myself. So I think, I have the aura like you. So I wake up in the morning and I look at my sleep, and during this time it's gotten quite depressing to look at aura. That was another thing I did. I actually took my aura ring off for a couple months, and I periodically take it off. That's something that I've done just because I don't want to face it, but I'm more mindful about using it now. I put it on and I try and have that self-talk where I'm like, okay, well, it's telling me some bad things about myself, but I don't necessarily have to believe them. I just need to use them. I have to use them in the right way. I have to use that information in the right way. And Curable was the same. I used it to be honest with myself about my symptoms, and then to get a read on the day. So you wake up in the morning and it takes your HRV. And so I used it to get a read on the day and what I should be doing that day in terms of activity, yoga, food. Fasting was another thing that really helped me, actually. And I went through both. I went through both parts. I saw a nutritionist and she told me to eat a lot of protein. And so I used to fast. I used to intermittent fast, and I started eating a lot of protein for organ repair. And then I realized actually through things like the Aura Ring and through Curable that just wasn't working. So I went back to intermittent fasting, and that really, really helped. That's been a big jump forward.
Yeah, it was massively helpful in my recovery too. Some people tell me it is really not helpful for them. So
Mhm.
it's definitely not putting any of this out like a blanket, strategy that's going to be good for everyone. But yeah, for me, it was helpful also. And for people who aren't aware, and we brought it up, Aura Ring is just it's a wearable little piece of tech that is a
Mm.
computer, and it gives you it connects to an app, and it tells you information about your heart rate variability, your stress levels, your sleep, how much deep sleep you're getting, your oxygen levels in your body, all different sorts of metrics. And I love how you
Mhm.
said about taking it off, because I think it's just a good thing. You don't want to be measuring yourself all of the time. And sometimes I know that I'm struggling and I know I'm not taking the best care of
Mhm.
myself. And I don't need my low score
Right.
every morning pointing that out. I'm like, okay, I get it.
Mhm.
Maybe this week I just take it off and I just,
Yeah, just put it down.
yeah, but it can be good just to give you a sense of what's going on. And Curable, if you're not familiar, is an app that helps. It was designed to help with chronic pain recovery, but as we know, we are
Mhm.
piggybacking on chronic pain science because they are
Mhm.
leading the way
They
in
are.
recovery from these symptoms that are connected to the autonomic nervous system. So Curable is great, and that it's science backed, and it's another thing that makes things accessible for just about everybody, because it's brain retraining information, brain retraining strategies,
Mhm.
and very accessible. And I do have a link. It's an affiliate link, but you can get 6 weeks of free of Curable. So I'll put it in the video description, because you can learn a ton
Mhm.
in 6 weeks in that free trial.
Yeah, you really can.
Yeah, yeah, some really great stuff out there.
Mhm.
Okay, now I've lost track of where we were. I took this on a side path.
Yeah, I think we were talking about the things that worked and the things that didn't work.
Okay, well, I'll
Mhm.
let you pick it up from there.
Okay, trying to think of some other things that didn't work. Well, supplements. I had some gut health issues that I had coming into it, and I think supplements were every time I started a new supplement, I thought it was going to be something amazing for me. I had a lot of hope, and then it made me feel worse, and that really contributed to. I think that just scared me. So I think coming to know myself in that way and finding a natural path, or maybe being clear with my naturopath about the fact that I wasn't going to take supplements, that I wasn't in a place where I was going to take supplements, and then acknowledging that at some point that supplements were what I need, and that I need to get away from that black and white thinking. Like I can't take supplements because they hurt me. So I
Yeah.
think coming to that realization that I need to titrate things really slowly, be really careful, and be honest with what's helping me and what's not helping me. That was one of the really big things that's just happened recently, actually.
I love that journey to the getting away from the black and white thinking, because I think a lot of us do this. Like, no, done with it. That's not for me. I'm closing my mind to that forever. Yeah. Whereas, okay, it doesn't have to be all in or zero. I'll keep your mind open. I love that there are a lot of birds that seem to want to take part in this interview.
Yeah, I'm hearing them.
Hearing all sorts of creatures over there. It sounds like you're sitting in the middle of some sort of park or.
Oh, no, I wish. Yeah.
I know you've talked about there are some really frustrating things facing invisible illnesses like long COVID or any sort of viral persistence. So what's that experience been like for you? What are some of the more challenging things?
It's a great question. It's actually something that's guided actually what I want to do with the rest of my life. Yeah, I did a paper. I'm doing a master's in counseling psychology. That's one of the things that this experience has guided me to move into. So, and I'm merging that with the yoga and the somatic work. And yeah, it's actually something really, really interesting. Oh my gosh, Raelan, I just totally forgot what your question was. Can you ask the question again?
What are some of the more frustrating things in these invisible conditions?
Yes. Yeah, that's why I got distracted. Yeah, it's okay. It's okay. That's why I got distracted, because I was thinking about the paper that I wrote, because I wrote a paper on invisible ICIs, invisible chronic illnesses. And it's really interesting and understudied area because these things are invisible. And I mean, obviously they're not invisible to everyone, right? They're visible to our partners. They're visible to us. I can tell by how much blue I have under my eyes when I wake up in the morning, how I'm feeling. Like, it's very clear to me. It's now very clear to my partner. But I think to a lot of people, especially because we try to get back out there and get back to work and get back to school and get back to yoga, get back to all of those things, get back to life. I think that invisible part is so important because we also don't want to talk about it. We want to be normal. We want people normal. We want to be sort of taken back into those things that we love: school, work, exercise classes, going out for lunch. We don't want to talk about the things we can't eat and how we have to go home or we can't have coffee because our nervous system is on overdrive, or all of those things. We just don't want to do that. It doesn't feel fun for us. So I think that invisible quality is such an interesting road to go down. Finding that balance between informing people of our condition, prioritizing ourselves and our self-care, informing people about our condition, but also finding that line of like still participating in things that make us feel good without feeling like an invalid or a patient or those things. That's particularly important in those sort of middle stages of these illnesses, right? When we're getting better, but we're not fully better, I think.
Yeah. Oh, it's massive. And figuring out how much is it serving you to talk about these things with other people, and how much space do you want to give it? Because we also know that fixating too much on symptoms and fear cycle and isn't healthy either. And also just personal boundaries, like how much of an explanation of my life do I owe to everyone around me? And sometimes I would find myself straight up lying about things just because I didn't want to have to explain this, and I'd feel bad about it. But I think it's a healthy boundary. It's okay. It's like, no, I don't have to tell you every piece of my struggle. So I'm just going to gloss over things with a half truth, and that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah. And when is that protective? Like, when is that? What's privacy, and when are those boundaries actually protective for us? And then gaining the self-awareness and the knowledge to put those into place and hold them. It's hard.
While also balancing, it's also exhausting to keep up a mask pretending that everything is fine when everything is not fine. So finding that balance between like, okay, every once in a while I'm going to give you a real answer. It's tough. The mindset is huge with recovery.
That's really big.
We all struggle with it because it's a challenging thing to navigate.
And I definitely run into people, especially clients, who are like, thank you for talking about this. Yeah. Because they want to talk about it, and you can make a safe space for that to happen. I think that's something that you've done, and it's really important.
Yeah. And when we do open up and tell people something real,
Mhm.
you will see the reaction from people that most people are relieved. They're like,
Mhm.
"Oh, I got to take my mask down for a couple
Mhm.
minutes and stop pretending that my whole life is easy." And so yeah, it's a juggle.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I agree.
So we touched a little bit about brain training when we talked about curable, but I haven't talked about it a
Mhm.
lot. But it's a
Mhm.
massive thing I'm sure you're aware of that people are
Mhm.
talking about in terms of recovery. So what has
Yeah.
your experience been with this?
Yeah, I had a really interesting experience with the idea of brain retraining. First of all, I'm really involved in the community. So in the sort of invisible illness community or the MECFS long COVID community. So I heard about it from many, many different sides. And I thought I was ready to try that. It was about when I started using the Curable app, and I enrolled in a program, and I think there were some mitigating factors. I also had a relapse. So I think I caught a virus. And I know for a lot of us, that's really one of those scary things. I think I got COVID again, or I just got a virus, and that sort of took me down a little bit so that my symptoms were also increasing at that time. But I wasn't ready for that particular program. It didn't help me, and it made me very frustrated because some of the rules of this particular program were that we were not allowed to talk about symptoms that were happening to us. And I think that really activated me because the symptoms feel so real. Since then, and I really couldn't not be heard. I feel like I wasn't, as we just talked about the invisible nature of the illness, I feel like I wasn't being heard in a lot of places. And this seemed like another place that I wasn't being heard. So, but I think I'm ready now to try it again. And I may try your program. But I think the advice that I would give to people around that is just make sure you're ready. And I think trying it is the only way to know if you're ready, maybe, but also find the right program that works for you, and be really careful to notice if it is working for you, and don't be discouraged. Like, I think I'll try it again because I know so many people who've had good results, that I will try it again, and I won't get discouraged around that. I'll keep coming back to it. I just know that if it doesn't work again, it's that I'm not quite ready. But I do believe that is going to be sort of the final icing on the cupcake of my recovery.
I like that. Really good point. And there are so many programs out there now. And it's important to remember that no one out there has all the answers and no
Mhm.
one program is working for everybody. And a lot of
Mhm.
programs have significant overlap in information,
Mhm.
mine included. And
Mhm.
something that I really drive home in mine is to think of these as a buffet of recommendations,
Mhm.
and you're going to have to customize things, pick what works for you, leave the rest. And some people take my program and they're like, "Oh, I've heard these things other places, but the way you said it just clicked," or
Mhm.
I like the way you speak." And for other people, I'm sure they're going to go through it and go and not, it's not going to work. And they'll go to some other program and they'll be like, "Oh, this is the person that resonates for me." So
Mhm.
yeah, everyone's coming at it from a place of their experience and putting out
Mhm.
something. And it's
Mhm.
it's not a one size fits all program for every,
Mhm.
like there is no approach.
Mhm.
And
Yeah.
many people have said what you said, they've tried it at certain points and it just wasn't the right time in their recovery.
Mhm.
It didn't fit then. So I'm
Mhm.
glad you bring it up because a lot of people struggle with this topic. Is it for me? Or sometimes they try and it doesn't work, which can be frustrating and
Mhm.
perplexing.
Mhm.
So yeah, really, really good to hear your experience with that.
Yeah, and bio individuality piece too, right? Like,
Yeah.
this might not be something that works with my body right now.
Yeah.
I think that's really one of the hardest things to get around,
Yeah.
because we're on this journey that where our body is changing so much. There's these mystery symptoms popping up here and there, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And although do see benefit from decreasing the focus on symptoms, of course, making that black and white rule that you could never talk about symptoms can also not be helpful. And the symptoms are very real. They're just as real
Mhm.
as symptoms anyone's experiencing after a
Mhm.
car accident or cancer. The
Mhm.
symptoms
Yeah.
are very real in our body. And sometimes you
Mhm.
do need to talk about them.
Mhm. I agree. Yeah.
So, how are you feeling about what's next for you in this journey of yours?
Well, my latest thing is lymphatic stimulation. So I'm really into thinking about lymph. And so I guess that's probably next on my agenda. I notice that when I do some lymphatic work, that sometimes I have small relapses. They're
Mhm.
quicker, they go away faster, which is as heartening. So I think that lymphatic work, and also probably the brain retraining, and getting back to work, and getting back to enjoying life. I'm drinking coffee again, which is a huge thing. I didn't drink coffee for a year and a half. Yeah.
I cut it out too for a long time. I missed it.
I missed it so much. What is it about coffee that is so amazing?
Just giving into it. I used to have a little voice saying, like, you should just not have to. No, it is just a part of my life. It is.
Yeah, it is. It's there.
It's beneficial to cut it out during times because it does interact with the nervous system.
Yeah, I agree.
Guilty pleasure. I'm not even guilty about bringing back.
Exactly. Same.
Oh, well, I'm really excited for you. Wow, you've learned so much on your journey, and you already were an insightful person around health and all of this. So now you are like a supercharged human. And I love the therapy focus that you're going down with counseling out there to help people in the world.
Absolutely.
Really, yeah, really great stuff. I thank you so much for taking the time. As always, I've learned a ton. I'm sure people watching have learned a lot. So thanks for taking the time to chat with us today.
You're very welcome. I've learned so much from you. I learned so much from your channel. It's nice to have the opportunity to give back.
It's beautiful. It's really great to have you here, Niki. And I actually talked about salt therapy. I'll link up here on the screen. I did a video a while back about salt therapy. I was to the salt caves, the clinic studios, whatever they called it, that they had in San Francisco. And it was a really great experience. So for people who are interested in learning more about it, I share a bit of the background of what
very cool.
Practicing is doing for the body.
Yeah. And it's so fun. It's so pleasurable. It's one of those therapies that just feels so good.
Yeah. And even in San Francisco, going to a studio, I think it's $25. And this is one of the most expensive cities on the planet. So it's another thing that you can find ways to do very low cost.
That's true.
Thank you again, Niki. Thank you so much. Thank you to everyone who's watching. We'd love to hear your comments and your thoughts. What do you think about all of this? Have you tried any of the things that Niki's talking about? Do you have any other suggestions that we haven't talked about today? Let's just get all that information out there. I hope you enjoyed this video. I hope you got a ton out of it, and I hope to see you in this next one where I talk to you about salt therapy.
Love it.